Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Nine. Sim, thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. Now, I am going to say this. You see, this present administration, I do not know what they are looking for from my own people. But one thing I know for sure is that that thing they are looking for, one day they are going to find it. And the day they will find it, it may not be on a good day. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because when people are not talking, when you are maltreating them, when you are doing something bad to them, the day they will talk, it might actually be very bad for you, right? It might be very bad because it is only from them that I heard that slavery was beneficial to slaves. That is how bad they've been working to whitewash the history. Tell me, why are you trying to whitewash people's history, worldwide history, American history, African American history, Black history? Why do you want to whitewash it? If you are not guilty, why do you want to erase somebody's history? It is you not teaching your kids, not teaching your entire household, not teaching your people the real history of America. That's why they come out and do some certain things they do. And when they do not teach them history, it affects people that look like me and gets our kids unalive and the rest of it. The day they will find what they are looking for, they may not like it. Let's get into this video.
All right, y'all. He is absolutely coming for our Blacksonian. There is no doubt about it. He specifically name-checked the National Museum of African American History and Culture in his latest executive order. Everything we feel about that is justified. If you are sickened, outraged, sad, incensed, all of it is legit. Because we know why he's coming for us. We know what our history teaches people. And we also know it is dangerous to be a people with no memory. But I always want us to remember that's not us. Our history, our memory doesn't exist because of that building. That building exists because we were wise enough to preserve our memory. Every single artifact in that building exists because somebody thought enough of what we created and we built and who we are, thought enough of generations yet unborn to preserve the memory. Against all odds, against all threats, our ancestors and our elders thought enough of us, generations they may never see or know, to keep the thing, to hide it under a floorboard, to whisper a story in secret, to pass the word in a newspaper we owned and printed, even when those offices and printing presses got torched, to preach it in churches, even when those churches got bombed, to teach it in schools that we created and funded, even when they came to shut those schools down. Somebody was wise enough to sing the memory in coded language and then record it in somebody's basement. Somebody was wise enough to write the family tree of the family we weren't supposed to have in the front page of that Bible, to plant the memory on somebody's field, to cook it in somebody's potbelly stove, to photograph it on somebody's hand-me-down camera, to paint it on bits and scraps of paper. Somebody was wise enough to style the memory on somebody's chest, to braid it into somebody's scalp. Somebody was wise enough and thoughtful enough and loved us enough to read and write the memory, even when reading and writing it meant almost certain death. All of these things were how we preserved memory when there was no museum, when there was no Netflix special, no Oprah's book club selection. It was dangerous work, and yet we knew it was necessary and righteous for the sake of a future of a people. Black people's memory has mattered long before we ever had a monument. And preserving that memory has preserved us. Those blueprints are how we got over. That's how we survived. That's how we sustained for generations in abjectly hostile territory. Our memory is how we built a future for a people that were supposed to be wiped out by now. A present for a people who were always supposed to be past. Our survival was supposed to be an impossibility, but instead, African people, chained and enslaved and ripped from their motherland, took the memory of that place, took the memory of our many languages and faiths and tribes and traditions and family structures and ways of being and values and created a new people in order to be protected and to persist. African American is a whole new creation based on the memory we preserved. That's who we are. So now more than ever, we're going to have to act like we know who we are. We are going to need those blueprints to survive, and we're going to need to preserve the memory we're creating now to build the future we deserve. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be outraged. We should. I'm not saying organized outrage doesn't work. Y'all know I believe it absolutely does. I'm not saying we shouldn't protect that building and everything in it and everybody in it. We absolutely have to. And we should always know our memory and the things made up of it made us a worthy people before we ever had a monument to ourselves. So we got to act like it. We're going to have to be the reason why we never lose a recipe. Now's the time, y'all. I love you.
Look, as a member of the 92%, I totally get why Black women wanted to sit this out and to rest. Because by the mere fact that our entire existence as Black women is politicized, we have been fighting our entire life for the cause, oftentimes without the recognition and support that is needed to sustain us both mentally and physically. Now begs the question how long we can continue to remain silent in the face of such obvious atrocities that are happening against us and to our neighbors. Because the reality is, African Americans is one of the original targets and victims of American violence, and now it's no different. The Smithsonian for African American History and Culture, as well as the Women's Smithsonian, is now under attack due to Trump's most recent executive order, deeming that these institutions are spreading false narratives as well as division ideology. Which tells me that in order to be considered a true and proud American, you have to be willing to deny the facts and the true history of this country. So for those who have been boycotting both publicly and silently, if you have a little bit of extra cash, I highly encourage you to donate directly to the Smithsonians as they continue to try to preserve the true history of America, one that includes African Americans, because African American history is world history.
I'm going to make this quick. So the latest executive order, which is titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, is targeting the Smithsonian museums. And J.D. Vance and his crew have been tasked with eliminating divisive race-centered ideology from the Smithsonian museums and exhibits, because of the federal funding or appropriations that they receive. And so I say all that to say that if you ever tried to discredit anyone who told you that Make America Great Again was code for Make America White Again, you was fucking wrong then and you fucking wrong now. And also fuck y'all. That's all. Fuck all y'all. Fuck all y'all bitches. I'm sick of it. Sick of it. I don't know.
I just want to say I'm proud of y'all for sitting y'all asses down. This attack on the National Museum of African American History is just a deflection from Signal Gate to try to get black people out on the streets. Don't do it, y'all. We are really smarter than this. Please just don't do it. But I'm proud of y'all. April 5th, enjoy the sun. Do something for yourself. And I don't want to see none of you motherfuckers talking about they're doing this, we gotta stand up. And when your ass get locked up, or your ass, nobody gonna come find you and figure out what's going on with you, don't come asking us to pay for your books. We told you to sit your ass down. This is not our fight, y'all. They know it, and they're trying to get us out there. Do not let them bait y'all to get in them streets. Please don't. It's not worth it. Use your money. Use your money. I don't care how dumb y'all think it is. It's dumb until you go out there in them streets and you realize the only time they're gonna start putting physical forces when the black and brown people go out there. Y'all see how calm these protests are now? Bring your black ass out there and see what happens.
In sad news, I moved to the DMV last year, late last year, like last November. Really started living here like in end of December. Anyways, I was most excited about getting to gallivant, in the museums in Washington, D.C. I was most especially excited about the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The plan for years has always been to take a few days off and just dedicate it to going through that museum over the course of a few days, back to back to back, hours in it. That has always been the plan. And now I have to rush to go see it as it currently is before they start gutting it and like robbing it of its soul, which is the intention of that executive order. It's not going to be me being able to take a few days off. I'm like traveling over the next 2 weeks. So it's going to be like a day during a weekend to at least like to see it, like to go in there and just go through the exhibits, take my time. Like obviously I will like go back, but I want to see it as soon as possible because I don't know how soon they're going to start taking things and erasing things and removing things. So I want to get in there as soon as possible. And unfortunately, as soon as possible, I will try this Sunday. But if I can't do it this Sunday, it's going to have to be like in 3 weeks, which sucks. But like this has been like a dream and a goal. And now I have to like hurry and hustle to make it happen.
So Donald Trump passed yet another executive order seeking to erase black people from history. And I'm going to read some excerpts from this executive order and just share my thoughts. In this executive order, he complains about objective facts being replaced with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth. And he complains about American history being shown in a negative light. He goes on to say this. He says, our nation's unparalleled legacy of advancing liberty, individual rights, and human happiness is reconstructed as inherently racist, sexist, oppressive, and otherwise irredeemably flawed. And he goes on to complain about the division of society and a sense of national shame. And he issues this executive order basically commanding the vice president to effectuate his anti-history initiatives. He basically says that the vice president shall effectuate the policies of this order through his role on the Smithsonian Board of Regents. And he talks about how the vice president will seek the removal of improper ideology from such properties. So from the Smithsonian museums, and take other action to effectuate these policies. And he also talks about how the Secretary of the Interior shall determine whether or not certain monuments, memorials, statues, markers, or similar properties have been removed or changed to perpetuate a false reconstruction of American history. And then, he goes on to talk about how those things will be restored. And he complains about people disparaging America's past. Basically, this man is trying to whitewash history. He's trying to present a distorted vision of history, a fictionalized version of American history, a romanticized version of American history. Instead of promoting actual history, this man wants to promote propaganda. He wants to ignore the fact that this country was founded on the genocide of the native people. He wants to ignore that reality. He wants to ignore the reality that African Americans were enslaved for hundreds of years in this country. He wants to ignore the reality that many of these founding fathers actually owned black people. He wants to ignore that reality. And instead, he wants to give you a fictionalized version of American history, where these founding fathers were just great people and America was just wonderful and great and promoted all this happiness while black people were enslaved, while black people were subjected to Jim Crow. He wants to ignore the fact that it's only been in relatively recent history that black people have had certain civil rights. And those few civil rights that we have, this man is trying to reverse them and end them, with these anti-DEI measures that this man is taking. And while he's trying to eliminate symbols and history, that talk about the experience of black people, while he's trying to eliminate those things, he's basically calling for the reestablishment, reinstitution of these symbols of hate. That's basically what he's saying, low key, because we know that there were demonstrations around this country calling for the removal of Confederate statues. And we know that Donald Trump called those people that were protesting to, those racists in Charlottesville that were protesting to keep that Robert E. Lee statue up in Charlottesville. We know that he supported them and called them some very fine people. So we know that this is about restoring those Confederate symbols. And make no mistake about it, the Confederacy is not about remembering the South or honoring a Southern heritage or any of that crap. It's about honoring a Confederacy that was responsible for death and destruction in this country. It's honoring a Confederacy that was a treasonous, traitor movement. It's about honoring a movement that was about white supremacy. That's what the Confederacy was about. It was about white supremacy and protecting the institution of slavery. And if you don't believe me, just read the words from the vice president of the Confederacy, where he talks about how that Confederacy was laid on a foundation of white supremacy. He talks about how it was designed to protect slavery. But those are the symbols that Donald Trump wants to erect again, while erasing our history, while erasing, for instance, the Black Lives sign on the street in Washington, D.C. And so as Donald Trump is trying to erase our history, and he's trying to erase us from positions of power and influence in this country. That is why they constantly label black people as DEI hires, as if we're undeserving and that we're in position simply because of the color of our skin. And that's part of the reason why he's going after the DEI programs, because he doesn't want to see black people in places of power and influence. The last thing I'll say is this. As I was reading this executive order and reading articles about it, I immediately thought about the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. If you haven't been to that museum, I strongly encourage you to go. I thought about the future of that museum in light of this executive order. He's going to reshape that museum or eliminate it altogether if he has his way. So all the sections talking about history and Jim Crow and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump doesn't try to eliminate those sections from that museum. And what will that mean for us? What will it mean for our legacy and our history if this man is allowed to have his way and to blot us out of history and erase us from history?
So Trump just dropped an EO about the Smithsonian's, and the museums and cultural events, and I don't know. I cried just now on the phone with my dad because someone that grew up in DC, this is like such a core part of my childhood and adulthood that is just, especially as a Black person and someone who's African American, like, those museums are like a lifeline for us, especially the new African American museum that he is targeting because of ideology indoctrination. It basically feels like a stab in the heart. It feels like a lynching, to be honest, of like Black American history, calling our history divisive when it's factual. That, especially if anyone's been in that museum, the levels are, they just are factual history. Like, I don't really know how else to explain that. And to find out that he possibly might remove cultural events related to it, and also whatever factual information in the museum, it's just, I don't know. It's just exhausting, because someone that has learned about dictatorships, this is how it starts. It starts with academia, starts with museums, cultural engagements, cultural events, cultural programming. I don't know. I don't know. This is like a real, I think every day it hits me like something else is going on, something else is happening. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know, like, I just don't want him to touch the museums. Like, we have to have something, right? Like, something to go to, something to look forward to, something to say, like, this is ours, this is history. And he's trying to erase that. I have a headache.
When I first heard that Trump was targeting the National African American Museum of History and Culture, I was frustrated and mad, of course, because I love that place, okay? But then I thought about it, because I really tried to be empathetic and see things from another viewpoint. And I said, you know, if my history was so disgusting, I had a history of, colonizing lands and, kidnapping people who were living their lives, and most of them died during this journey. I forced them to go on, and I took the best things from the lands, and then I just made their people not even human, and then I, had them work our land for free, and then I raped them as much as I wanted to do, the women and the men, and then I bred them, made sure they had more babies so I would have more people to work my land, and then I did horrific things to them and just treated them worse than you would a dog. Maybe I wouldn't want it highlighted. Maybe I wouldn't want to talk about it. So I was like, okay, let me be empathetic. But then, as a person who, has been to the museum multiple times, I said, well, they need to understand. They need to go to the museum and recognize that talking about us being enslaved and Jim Crow and all of that, our oppression, is really a very small part of what they present. They present the full spectrum of the experience of people from the African diaspora in America. And, you leave there feeling celebrated and seen and inspired and like you could do anything you want to do. And then I realized, yeah, that's part of the problem too. Yeah, that's the problem too. Yeah, I get it. Empathy is working. So yeah, ensure you do what you need to do to learn all you can about who you are and from whence you came, because I promise you it would inform you everything that you can be. And we're going to spread the word. We're going to educate our people, our children, everybody. Okay? They ain't stopping nothing.
So even the aspiration to a common root requires a violence of erasure. Requires you to erase where you came from, what you were doing there, and how that connects all the way through to right now, at least enough to replace your father with George Washington. Requires a violence of erasure that would have you set aside your mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, all the way back as far as you can go. And if you can't name them, you can certainly gesture toward where you came from and the things they passed from generation to generation to generation, movement and memory right into your living, beating heart right now. To put her a little bit to the side, dress her in a head wrap and a skirt, maybe give her a white baby to feed and a field to work in, and instead enshrine in the center Abigail Adams. And read the correspondence with John Adams as if that's your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather having conversation. The violence is a violence of narrative and is absolutely driven by ideology. So that executive order that says that the vice president and others must remove the improper ideology means you got to stop this obstruction of a reality that we were all in this, because the only hope of even sustaining the United States of America in any form would be for everybody to be included. And we have fought for 2 or 3 generations at this point in those same spaces to include as many people as possible for just the possibility of all of us living together. But you want to fight that because when you hear everybody, that means you ain't in control. So you send your little 5 o'clock shadow, smoky eye, Manchurian candidate friend in. And guess what? In the executive order, it says he must also do this with the work of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, and therein lies the simple center of the ideological project. You want to bring in Russell Vaught, who was directing your OMB in the first term, and now here you back, and he's back. He the architect of this. And he understands that you've read this, as Lurie has walked us through many times, and we've had that conversation, Karen. We've had that conversation all over Channel 126. We've had that conversation on Black Star Network. We had it endlessly, to the point where even Taraji P. Henson name-checked it at the BET Awards. Huh? Right, because y'all wouldn't watch that other stuff. More people are every day know now that you realize, oh, we need an ark. Well, there are some arks that have been built. Come on. Or better yet, we don't need no ark. We can swim. If we recognize that we can swim. If you don't, you'll drown and not realize you could have saved yourself. In fact, you could see that the ocean is your friend.
So this is the new thing, right? You want to get rid of the African American Museum, calling it divisive, calling it race-centered, calling it corrosive. Really? And the things that's going on right now is none of those things. These entertainers, you black entertainers out here, you need to start buying this stuff. Buy it up. You got the money to do it. We have made you rich by buying your stuff, your clothes, your music, your concert tickets. Y'all need to buy this stuff up. I'm blaming y'all. Yeah. The Democrats, they don't really have a whole lot of power to do anything. They standing up the best they can, but they can do a little bit more harder standing up to this stuff. And we're not taking the bait. And I'll leave you with this.
Here today is because somebody somewhere stood up when it was risky. Stood up when it was hard. Stood up when it wasn't popular.
Let's talk about it. The latest executive order signed by acting President Donald Trump, because Elon Musk must have been busy. Restoring truth and sanity to American history is the latest executive order signed by Donald Trump. And this executive order is nothing more than the legalized sanctioning of whitewashing history. Now, before I continue, allow me to clarify something, because some of you all have me and my page fucked up. My page and the issues I raise on it are for those people who believe in active caring, No, I'm not just putting this content out for people who don't care to tell me what they think, because I don't give a fuck what you think. My page is for those people who care enough to take action, because I talk about actions that need to be taken with every subject I raise. Now, if that's not you and you don't want to get cussed out or have to use one of your backup pages without your face or content on to speak, then you could leave now. Back to this executive order. Now, this executive order is about legally sanctioning the federal government to whitewash history, not only in the classroom, but even in federally funded museums and exhibitions. And let's take one of the examples that is directly in this executive order, an example targeting the Smithsonian American Art Museum that has an exhibit titled The Shape of Powers, Stories of Race in American Sculpture. The executive order attacks the mission statement of that very exhibit, that societies, including the United States, have used race to establish and maintain systems of power, privilege, and disenfranchisement. Now, the thing is, none of that is conjecture. It is all truth. But this administration seeks to whitewash that because they don't like it. They think that pointing out the truth of history is a race-centered ideology that causes division. Moving right along. This executive order also directly targets the National Museum of African American History and Culture because it doesn't like its proclamation that hard work, individualism, and the nuclear family are aspects of white culture, which it is. It also has targeted the American Women's History Museum, and it hasn't even opened yet. So this executive order is this administration's statement on how it plans to whitewash history. I didn't say attempt to, I said part of its plan. Now, the counter plan relies on us. See, the solution to this is what I have been talking about. When I do series like the unwhitewashing of history or This Is Our History, it is to teach and to spread the word of the true and accurate history of Black people, not only in this country, but prior to the transatlantic slave trade. We need to take up the mantle and make sure that you all are following people that are accurately talking about the history of our people, not only to 1619, but beyond. And y'all need to help finance it also. Y'all have the day you deserve. Peace.
My people, hear me now. So Donald Trump just signed an executive order to silence our truth, to wipe out our history, and to put a fake smile on a nation that's been bleeding us dry since its birth. He calls it restoring truth in American history. But let's be real. This ain't about truth. It's about control. He wants to stop the Smithsonian from teaching our children about slavery, racism, genocide, and injustice. The very things that built this country brick by bloody brick. He's attacking the National Museum of African American History and Culture and any program that talks about the systems that tried to keep us down. Why? Because our truth makes him uncomfortable. Because our history exposes their lies. Trump says our museums have fallen under divisive, race-centered ideology. No, sir. Our museums have finally started telling the whole story. Not just the whitewashed version, not just the fairy tale, but the truth. That racism shaped American laws, its economy, and its identity. He says exhibits that teach about power, privilege, and disenfranchisement are anti-American. But what's more anti-American than hiding the truth? Let's not forget, they told us that slavery was a necessary evil. They told us that we were 3/5 of a man. They erased Black towns from maps. They built statues to the very people who fought to keep us in chains. And now they want to make it illegal for the Smithsonian, our institution, to even say race exists as a social construct. They don't want us to learn the truth Because truth brings power, and power in the hands of people terrifies them. Trump's order even targets hard work and individualism, claiming that we labeled those things as white culture. That's a lie. What we've said is that those values were used to judge and punish black folks, while white systems handed out privilege without effort. That's the kind of twisted narrative they spread to silence us. This ain't new. Every time we gain ground, they move to the finish line. Every time we lift our voices, they try to shut us up. But we are not going back, as Kamala says. We are the truth they fear. We are the mirror they avoid. We are the proof that this country has never been perfect, but that our fight for justice is what makes it worth saving. So what do? We stand up. We speak out. We protect our stories. We teach our kids what the museum can't. We support our Black historians, our artists, our storytellers. We call out every lie, every law, every order meant to erase us. Because if they take our history, they take our power. And if we lose that, we lose everything. But as long as we breathe, our truth lives on. They want to rewrite the story, but baby, we are the story. Let the world know. We won't let them erase our pain, our progress, or our people. Not today, not ever. So rise up, speak truth, stay woke. We got work to do.
This is all I got from this video, and all I can say is that, you know, they know what they are doing, because tell me how a particular people or a particular government has been on a particular people. Is that not obvious that there is something that they are looking for? Because tell me how you woke up and you call somebody's history violent. And who were the people that committed those heinous acts? Your people, right? So why is their history, what you people did to people, how come it became violent? How come the history became violent? When you should be telling people that what you did to those people were violent. That is to tell you that, you see, there is no truthful people anymore. There are quite few. But you see, this regime and all these people in power, forget about them, because they absolutely know what they are doing. And this is something they've been working on the ground for a longer time, because I remember when they said that history was beneficial to slaves. And where was that coming from? It started from Florida, right? Florida is where woke goes to. Like, it looks like it's something that has been under the pipeline for a longer time. And now the person that they've been working with all this while finally got into power. All thanks to those people, to the white people, to the Latinos, to the Asian, all of you that collectively voted this man into power. Black people wake up every day to different stories. And you people do not, and still they wake up every day with different stories and different challenges, and still you all are calling them to come and help you fight your own fight, when they are not even talking about their own. That is to tell you how selfish some of these people are too. You want to erase their history, whitewash their history. How do you want people that you people traveled off to use it's kidnapping? It is called I wanted to say stole. It is kidnapping. Brought them over. You don't want to pay them reparations. You don't want them to leave. You don't want them to stay. You have to choose one. You have to choose one and stop running around, because all I see you people do is run around. You see how vital and how important those people are to you. You don't want to let them go. All you are looking for is a way to frustrate all their efforts and make it look like all the things they've been talking about their history never happened. It was all made up. How was that made up? You all should go back to school and teach your own children, because you all never taught your children about Black history, about worldwide history, about American history, because African American history is everybody's history. I don't know if that does make sense. This is one of the reasons why I keep encouraging every one of you to make sure that are in your family as your child is growing, because there is a particular point you get to, if you don't catch them young, it should be actually very hard for you to catch them at old age or at a certain age. So you have to start from beginning. When you do not teach them the history, they won't know it. And there is nothing as bad as learning history from outsiders. I love to tell my story. Don't tell my story because you will not tell it good enough. Because you would like to add pepper, add sauce, add vinegar, right? Let the people with the story tell their story. But no, how will they tell their story? Because their story is not important. There is no need for them to tell the story because everything they are about to tell never happened. You all know that you are lying. You've been poking them so hard, they are not even moving, and they will still not move. See, I know how vital that museum is. But if they say that is what they are, wait, is our history, are we even supposed to, is anybody supposed to tell us, is somebody supposed to tell you your history? You are supposed to know your history and continue to teach it in your household because that is really very vital. Let your kids know, because when they know some certain things, they will have a stand and they will stand on their ground when it comes to some certain things. I am going to draw the curtain. Bye for now.